Hello there, I'm Gloria Makarenko. Young talent given another chance to thrive and will go on a treasure hunt for the city's hidden restaurant gems. This is Our Vancouver. Coming up, helping each other heal from residential school and sharing love with children and community at Lac Walams. And a couple of Vancouver foodies find family lore in the city's kitchens. But first, a gifted Afghan student facing life under Taliban rule finds help a world away. Now, in the middle of what seems to be one global crisis after another, we have a bright light to share with you today. A group of young female students from war-torn Afghanistan. They were facing dire odds when their international student visas were about to run out, and a lifetime of oppression awaited them back home. So one of those students reached out over social media, and that student, Habiba Nazari, is here now to tell us what happened next. And with her is Friba Rezaei. Friba is the head of Women Leaders of Tomorrow, and I'm so pleased you're both able to be with us today. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Habiba, let's start with you. How does it feel to be here in Canada?
For me, it's a good opportunity because I can continue my education here. From the time I came to Canada, Vancouver, I started my grad program at UBC, University of British Columbia. And as you know, what's going on in Afghanistan and what's happening there, that women are banned from going to school or studying, and women are banned from working. So when I came here, I got this opportunity to continue my education and do whatever I want to do to achieve my goals. And this is a great opportunity for me to be here and continue my education.
I see. So let's talk about reaching out on social media then, when you thought, I have to go home, I have to go and face that with the Taliban in control?
I was in Afghanistan in July 2022, the time that it was the crisis was happening in Afghanistan, and I left Afghanistan only 5 days before the Taliban government. And when I went back to the Kazakhstan, and I had 1 more year to study there. By finishing my study permit and my visa in Kazakhstan, I didn't have any hope. I was so hopeless. And I was thinking that if I go back to Afghanistan, what was happening to me was unacceptable for us because we couldn't continue our education, we couldn't continue our studies. And what we were expecting in Afghanistan was so bad for us, and it was not acceptable. From the time I was an alumni member of WLOT, Women Leaders of Tomorrow, and we reached out to them in order to request for any cooperation from them, because we were a group of 10 people that we were studying technical area mining engineering in Kazakhstan, and as mining engineering is a technical field of study, and we were not able to study technical field of studies in Afghanistan back because it was a male-dominated field of study. And by that time, when we reached out to WLOT, we got this opportunity to connect with UBC. And then we got a scholarship, and 10 of us, a group of 10 people from Afghanistan that we used to study in Kazakhstan, we came to Vancouver, and we all started our program, our grad program in technical area. Yeah.
Well, I know that's quite a background already. And Friba, what about your background? I mean, you're already a role model for young women in Afghanistan. You're an Olympian. Tell us about that experience.
Thank you so much. Yes, I was born and raised in Afghanistan, and in 2004, Afghanistan was getting ready to send a delegate and team of athletes to 2004 Athens Olympic Games, and I was selected to represent Afghanistan. I was honored, and it was a privilege. And my participation at the 2004 Athens Olympic Games was also a sports revolution for a young generation, for women and girls in Afghanistan. They have joined different sports. And I always wanted to do something for Afghan women to empower them through education and sport. And I chose education because education is very important and it's our basic human innate rights. And I always believed, even as a child, and I still believe that Afghan women have talent. We are very strong. We are smart. Afghan women are smart, but we always lacked opportunities to thrive, to feel and reach our full potentials. I started Women Leaders of Tomorrow to create that opportunity and the platform for Afghan women so they can reach that full potential.
So you see this message for help from Habibi and Habiba, my apologies. What goes through your mind? How do you rally support?
The Afghanistan Central Republic government collapsed in August of 2021. I was devastated. I was devastated in Vancouver. I watched the government collapse live on Al Jazeera, live in my apartment in Vancouver. And I was in contact with many Afghan girls. I received hundreds of desperate messages asking me to help them leave the country and to be able to escape Taliban's persecution. And in February of 2022, I received an email from Habiba's cohort from Kazakhstan mentioning that they are in a dire situation. Their visas are expiring. They will not get renewal, and they can't go back to Afghanistan because there was no place for them. Had they gone to Afghanistan, it would have been a death wish for them. Also because they were all 10 Afghan women without any male guardian, which Taliban have imposed on them, no family members. So they would be immediately questioned by the Taliban guards at the Kabul International Airport, and they would have been sent to prison. I did not see the future bright, but and then I rallied and I did whatever I could within my contacts in Vancouver area to secure scholarships for them at UBC, and I reached out to UBC, I reached out to donors, I reached out to supporters. Everybody came together to support 10 Afghan women.
And who are these other women? Are you in contact with them, Habiba?
Like as I mentioned, we were 10 Afghan girls that we were studying in Kazakhstan at the same university, at the same field of study. And we are all right now here, UBC student, and we are doing our grad program in different field of study, but at all we are studying at applied science.
Oh, and what do you want to do with your future? Because it seems that you have a future.
For sure I have. As I have the opportunity right now to study and continue my education after graduating from UBC, what I want to do is just trying and working to make an opportunity for Afghan women, mostly girls, that they want to study in technical area, but they cannot study in Afghanistan because it's a male-dominated field of study here, and they are not allowed to study technical areas. So I will make this opportunity for Afghan girls to continue their education in your desired field of study, and helping them to find some programs that they are eligible and they want to do that.
A future for people who are watching right now. What can we do to help?
There was an entire team behind the success of the 10 Afghan women. They also advocated for themselves. They helped themselves. I just followed their leadership. I followed them, what they want to do, and I wanted to accommodate their need. I am very honored and privileged to be able to work with them and to even know these amazing 10 Afghan women. Whoever is watching us, listening to us, this project hasn't ended yet. We need support. We need support from donors. We need support from community members. We need support from schools, educational institutes in BC and all over Canada as well. What I want the universities in Canada to mobilize, to design. I started an initiative to support Afghan women's education and to put a focus on women's education in Afghanistan, because Afghanistan is the only country presently that education is banned by the Taliban for women. And when we say Taliban ban education, they did not only ban, they also have imposed strict punishment for women if they are caught or seen going to classrooms or if they are studying, especially modern studies, technology, science, math, literature. If they study, they will be punished. And the punishment that they have imposed are imprisonment, flogging, actual flogging, and other very strict punishments. So we need to put Afghanistan and girls' education into our hearts and agenda in order to support them, because there is no other way. There are no alternatives for Afghan women for education at the moment.
Thank you very much for being here today, for shining a light on this important issue, and all the best to you both.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
我叫郑峰慧。
I'm Wei Li.
And I, Olivia.
This is our Vancouver.
A new CBC podcast is highlighting the long and at times complicated love story of an elder couple from Lac Kw'alaams Nation. Mona and Leonard Alexi share stories from their childhoods on the BC coast and their love story spanning 70 years of marriage. Here's part one of Love Knows No Tribe.
So as a child, I grew up in a camp setting, like wilderness, with animals and salmon and trapping. That was our lifestyle in those days for survival. And we'll come here in the wintertime, spend a few months in Lac Kw'alaams. And Shirley was the first one. Your mom was a good friend of ours. And to me and my cousins, it was a lovely life. It was freedom. And then for some reason, my Aunt Peggy was in Port Edward. They had work going there. So my parents took us over to visit. And I often wonder why, but they didn't return to Lac Kw'alaams. They just got employment in Port Ed. It was a beautiful community because from all over the districts, all over the areas, up and down the coast, it seemed like they all come to Port Ed for employment. And there's one happy community. Everybody knew everybody, although you're from different communities. It was just a friendly place. It was so good. And this was right after the war.
Well, what was your first reaction, if you could tell us about that, when you went and saw a cannery for the first time?
For myself, because of the way I grew up. I was more or less out there in the wilderness with the animals and everything. To work in a cannery, it was so amazing. It was so loud. And a different smell there, and not fresh air like I grew up. It was like a circus. It was just music, the cans coming, the music, and the motors going.
The living conditions there, certainly when Irwin took me out for a tour, because Irwin was the one who really remembered Port Ed a lot, and he told me about how they lived on a dock in a small shack that all of them had to sleep in, and they had to go out to get water, a bucket of water and that. Could you tell me about your experience? Was it similar to that?
Well, where we lived, my mom and dad, my sister Betty, my brother Herbie, myself, there's 5 of us. They had their little rooms, a 1-bedroom shack, I guess you'd call cannery row house. It was very crowded. It was very cold over the water. It was very damp. And our facilities were outdoors. and that's cool. Cannery Row was meant just for summertime, but there's employment sometimes during the winter. It was not built for that, and it's awfully cold. I know Leonard's worked there a few winters. It was very hard for our native people. I find it hard because it was there was a lot of discrimination, even that late in my lifetime, which was more in my parents' time.
Now you got sick too, right? When you were
Yeah, I got
working
sick
Canada.
in Port Ed.
Tell us about that, about how you got sick and
This was about the time when there was so much tuberculosis breakout, and I ended up in Miller Bay Hospital. They didn't give me much hope. I was there for 3 years, and each year when you get a treatment, it would last a year. It was experimental treatments for Native people, but I find that the treatments there are very harsh. I know I used to cry every week when I get that's when they collapse your lung and they put a needle in your tummy without freezing it.
did they tell you why they collapsed you?
Pumped the air in there. The needles were not fine. They had the air, oxygen had to go through that, which is not, other people don't suffer as much as I did, but there was something in there that stopped the needle and they just ram it in there. And that's why I used to cry.
She had a hole in her lung the size of a 50-cent piece. That's why they had to collapse it to rest her lungs. She couldn't do anything. She couldn't comb her hair.
Yeah, that's the
brush her
first year.
teeth, nothing.
First year, you just lay flat on your back. Couldn't comb your hair, couldn't wash your face. Everybody has to do it for you, to show you're still and your lungs are not exerting itself. And then the second year, I got injection twice a day for a whole year. And my rear end, it got to the point where I couldn't walk very much. The third year, I figured I was going home the second year. But the third year, they came back for the same treatment, twice a day. And this time I really cried because that hurts.
And then, all of a sudden, that guy shows up at some point?
That's where I met this guy.
Coming up, two foodie gal pals dish on their new web series, Munchies to Michelin.
Roll action! Okay. Welcome to Pinky and the Brain Show. Just joking.
That's Amelie Nguyen from Vancouver's Michelin-listed restaurant On and Chi, and her longtime gal pal, self-proclaimed foodie, Trudy Tran. Welcome back to our Vancouver. I'm Gloria Makarenko. That clip is from a new series that's called Munchies to Michelin. And as you might imagine, it takes a closer look at some of the city's hidden restaurant gems. Well, co-host Amelie and Trudy, they are here now with us to share some of the fun that they had putting this all together. Hello there, and welcome to you both.
Hi, Gloria.
It's great to have you back here, and it's kind of strange to have you in studio and not be talking about specific dishes and that type of thing. But Amelie, how did all of this come together?
Well, we have been friends for a long time, and I think through COVID we were looking for fun projects to do,
And I was dabbling in film, and Trudy's always been a food photographer. And I've had experience with Tell a Story Hive. So this is a Tell a Story Hive funded project from their Voice program. And we decided to, we joke a lot. And we're like, let's do something together. I love to be on camera. you love to be behind the camera.
I love to be behind the camera.
Right. And we motivated each other.
Well, the original project was that she would be in front of the camera and I would be behind it filming. But, it evolved and we became both on camera, and she's still the prettier one.
No.
I'm curious as well that you said we've been friends for a long time.
Yes.
Trudy, how long? Take us back to that friendship.
30 years. We met in homeroom in high school. It's a funny story because, in homeroom, you look left, or the teacher said you either make, partners or friends with the person that sits on your left or the person that sits on your right. And the person that sat on my right wasn't very friendly and didn't want to talk to me, so lack of options. I'm like, hi. She was so friendly. I was like, okay, I'll be your friend. And we haven't stopped speaking to each other since.
Okay, but when did the food conversations come into the picture, Trudy?
Oh, that's the foundation of our friendship, I think. We're always eating together. We're always, cooking together. Like, in the past we would go out to eat a lot more, and then of course, as her family started the restaurant and she started to work with her mom on recipes and whatnot, I would help her take photos and videos. And so, we've always sort of shared our friendship and our relationship through over the table or over the counter.
Okay, so what's your vision for this series?
Oh, well, this is kind of like a pilot project that has gone really well. Every time we watch it, there's tears, there's laughter. We hope that this sparks more families and more restaurateurs to speak about their story, because there is so much struggle that we don't see when we see the food on the plate. And we want to share that, because those stories of struggle are the stories of resilience that could carry on further.
Well, it's interesting you say that. When you say we're talking about restaurants and stories and families, there are tears. There are tears and there are laughter. What are some of sort of the common threads in these stories?
Oh, it was fascinating. So we asked every single chef or restaurateur, what was your biggest struggle or biggest sacrifice, actually? And they said time away from their family. And it's not any different in my family growing up. And so that was, this journey of making the film was also our personal journey. We learned a lot about ourselves and kind of worked through our childhood,
Are you getting a little emotional thinking about that, aren't you?
It was so emotional. I think I cried every set. Yep. And our cinematographer's like, that's good television. Keep going. But it just happened, right? Like I wasn't trying. It just hit home every time.
I know that you've shared your family story when you and your brother were on the show and talking about your parents, sort of establishing that whole restaurant, you guys coming in, working it over and putting your own stamp on it as well.
Yes.
So, Trudy, what are some of the stories that stand out for you?
There's quite a few. I think when we started on this project, it was really, for me, it was all about the food. But Amelie is a storyteller, and because of her background in restaurants and because of her experience as a child growing up in the restaurant scene, she knew the hardships and she wanted to get more in-depth. And so it started to evolve about the story behind the food. And for that reason, we learned so much about what goes into keeping a restaurant afloat, what goes into putting that dish on your table. And, one of the most memorable scenes for me was when a uncle who's run this restaurant for about 35 years, and he talks about passing it on to his next generation and knowing that, something he's worked so hard on for 35 years may not get passed on because his children do not want the baton. They do not want to take it over because of some of the bad experiences they had as children growing up in a family where their parents were always running the restaurant, didn't have time for them.
Right.
And so, he started to cry. It's very rare to see an Asian man cry.
Oh my.
Yeah, so we felt it.
Right, but you cover quite the spectrum here when you say from Munchies to Michelin. Why is that? What's behind the title?
We thought it was catchy. This was before Michelin even came to Vancouver, before we even knew
that thing. Yeah.
And so Munchies, because we snack. Trudy snacks a lot. We like eat out, and so we're like, what nibbles that people need to know about, like local gems that are off the radar, but still delicious, that, you know, we kind of like put our stamp on, and that's kind of maybe Michelin worthy. You know, like worth a visit, not saying anything more than that. Yeah.
So do you want to give us a little bit of a hint? Which restaurants come to mind, Trudy?
Oh.
Well, naturally, you know, our favorite restaurant.
Do not. This is not a plug for, you know.
I wasn't going to say yours.
Okay.
Get over yourself.
Okay.
I'm
catching some of the dynamic between the two of you. Okay.
I know.
So actually, all of the restaurants that we picked, it was very hard for us to select, but these are restaurants that we frequent regularly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so that's the reason why.
Give us some names.
Oh gosh,
okay.
It's so hard. Joe's Italian Deli in Kits, right?
Okay.
It's just so homey. My kids love it.
Yeah, Nguyen Cafe.
Nguyen Cafe. They do Central Vietnamese food off Victoria Drive.
Yeah.
What else?
Sushi, Uma Sushi.
Uma Sushi, which is in like the Fairview. And it's just, you know, and it's people who had the time to work with us, as well as their food is delicious, and that through the story, so it's a 10-part series, but each one kind of goes through it tells one bigger story. So you kind of have to watch all 9, but each one is fulfilling enough.
Good plug. Stay with us. The best part's at the end. Listen, you two, you have obviously there's a lot of friendship and a lot of connection there, and that just jumps out of the camera. So thank you both so much for coming in. We can't wait to see all 10 episodes of Munchies to Michelin. All the best to you.
Thank you, Gloria.
Thank you so much, Gloria.
Thank you.
Love Knows No Tribe is a CBC podcast documentary about the life and love shared by an elder couple from the Lakwalams Nation. In part 2 now, we're going to find out how Mona first met Leonard 7 long decades ago.
That guy shows up at some point?
That's where I met this guy. They had a visiting, the patient's visit, just on Christmas.
Oh, okay.
So I met him for 5 minutes. Then they sent him to residential school the next day. To him, that was the beginning. To me, that was the end.
What was your first impression of Leonard?
I didn't know him. I didn't know him. I know he was from Lakwalams, but I never met him. I knew him as a child, but then we went different ways.
Leonard's mother had passed away giving birth to him, so he ended up moving in with his aunt who lived in King Colas, in the Nass.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he lived in King Colas for 7 years, and he only knew how to speak Nishka. And then his aunt's husband had passed away, and they had to move back from King Colas to Lakwalams. So then he had a harsh life here in Lakwalams for the next 3 years, and then he ran away to Port Edward to be with his brother and his father. He found out his father was alive, so he moved in with them in Port Edward. And then him and his brother heard there was a new thing out called Family Allowance, and so they wanted to get their share because it was meant for kids. And they both, Uncle Johnny and Leonard, both walked from Port Edward to Prince Rupert to the government office to collect their money. And that's where the Indian agent found Dad. And that's when they sent him to Port Alberni at the age of 9 or 10. And he stayed there for the next 7 years. While he was in Port Alberni, his father had died of TB, so he became an orphan then. So they kept him there. They didn't send him home.
Oh, that's why the 7 years.
Yeah, and they did finally send him to Miller Bay because he contacted TB in Port Alberni Residential School. So they sent him back to Miller Bay, and that's where he first saw my mother. And if you remember, my mother was lying in bed for a whole year. She couldn't move. She couldn't do anything. And so my mother was trying to discourage my father. Find somebody else.
What did you say? Oh, how were you trying to discourage him?
Well, he was in Alberni at this time, and he wrote letters. And you couldn't see, you couldn't read these letters. But it took me a while to read it. And that's after he came back from school. I was still in a hospital. I still had, I didn't know how long I'd be there. That I don't know if I'll ever get home. I had no idea if I would. So 3 years, nah, go on, go. But he didn't listen. In the meantime, I got to like him. He was very friendly, and he was easy, happy-go-lucky guy. But I didn't have my hopes up too high, because like I said, I didn't know if I was ever coming home.
Coming up, the joys and sorrows revealed next in Love Knows No Tribe. Hi, welcome back to Our Vancouver. I'm Gloria Makarenko. Our CBC podcast documentary, Love Knows No Tribe, continues now with family joys and the love that healed after painful residential school revelations.
So I was there 3 years, and I did come home and from the hospital. Then I have a whole year of transition. But then we got married in 52. And
7 years after the Second World War ended.
We had my eldest son, Art, that same year. And like he said, we wanted more, a bigger family. But it took 5 years before Peter came along, and that was it. So through the years, it was okay. Then 20 years into our marriage is when I found out about Leonard's experience at the residential school. He didn't mention anything. It was like a puzzle that was some parts missing in his life. So when he stood up in Civic Center at a conference, he told his story. That's the first time I heard it.
I was in Miller Bay first, and then I stayed at Miller Bay. Then they sent me down to Alberni. I liked Alberni. It was a beautiful place. Nice lake. But there was a lot of pedophiles in our school. For the second week I was there, and one of these guys came in, take the kid that was laying next to me, next bed. Then he came back crying. I didn't know why, but I soon found out. A lot of pedophiles in that school.
I sat there like different colors of rainbow, my emotions. I was crying so hard for this little boy that went through all that experience. This is when we found out, and then I had Art and Peter come together, and we talked to him. I told the children not everything, but that he needed our help, that we have to help him. And he went in a deep spin after that, after opening up. His life just went out, just so much hurt in him. It wasn't until my mother and I had gone to church every Sunday, and he drops us off, and he wouldn't come in. He had this thing against the churches. But he dropped us off. Then finally he came. And then his life sort of changed after that.
Up until that point in his life, in a better part of my life, he really struggled with the after effects of residential school. He became an alcoholic. He became a deep alcoholic, would hide his drinks everywhere, would self-medicate on his own. And for the longest time, we didn't understand why he was going through all this all the time. And it wasn't until when he stood up in the Civic Center and talked about his experience in residential school that we finally understand. I can attest that it just doesn't stop with Dad. It runs in the family, intergenerational. So our whole family, because of the residential school, really struggled to keep together. And it was because of Mom that helped us keep together. And when he turned his life around, he was a very, very good person. He was a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of drinker because of residential school. He'd be very sweet as a dad one day, and the next moment he could be somebody totally different because he was fighting those demons inside.
Oh. Where was this lady telling her story?
In the Civic Center.
Oh yeah, Civic Center. Hey, I said to myself, she's telling my story. At residential school, all the pedophiles. It was just...
And coming up, we're going to continue with the CBC podcast documentary, Love Knows No Tribe. Hi, welcome back to Our Vancouver. I'm Gloria Makarenko. So how does a family sum up 70 years of love and loss? Well, for the most part, the Alexis found their footing in the church. But as we find out in part 4 of Love Knows No Tribe, sometimes redemption can only come from a court of law.
This lady telling her story.
In the Civic Center.
Oh yeah, Civic Center. Hey, I said to myself, she's telling my story. At residential school, all the pedophiles. It was just... But with God's help, like we're very religious family, my wife and
You know, at the time he opened up the Civic Center, there was no counselors at that time, not one. He broke down and the others broke down. So I also had to learn how to handle this. It was very difficult. So we really struggled because we had no counseling.
And he did end up taking the church and Canada to court. There was about 8 of them altogether, and they won because of his testimony and those of the small group of men that came forward for everybody. He endured, again, their endless questions. There were many lawyers on their side and only one on Dad's side. He was the one that changed everything. He was the one that got Prime Minister Stephen Harper to stand up in Parliament. It was him and that other group that came forward at the very beginning. So what he got out of all that is just nothing. It's just peanuts to them. But it did change the whole system, the school system, the judicial system. And that's not the first change that Dad brought into Canada. He was also there for to help put together the first all-native basketball tournament. It's going on for 70 years now, or 60.
No, it was in 1960, so 63 years old now.
63. He was also there for responsible for the first Friendship Center in Canada, which is now Canada-wide. And he was the one that paid the city $1 to buy a piece of land to buy a building to start the Friendship Center in Canada.
You guys have lived in Rupert probably for longer than anywhere else, I imagine?
Yeah, 57. You were about a month old.
Yeah.
57 up to 8 years ago, 10 years ago.
And then you guys went down to Richmond for a while?
7
And now
years.
here you are.
Complete
in Lac
circle.
Willam's complete circle. Talk about that, well, your journey making it back to Lac Willam's and how you feel being back in Lac Willam's.
Well, for both of them to decide to come home, I had a lot of thoughts about that, but I'm slowly getting to know what's going on here, and I really like it. I love the pool. We go every day, and I do a lot of craft work with the clinic. I find that without the clinic and the pool staff, there's really not much. But we're at the point now also where we're slowing down, so I like it.
Okay.
I don't know about these guys.
And you love the pool, right, Leonard? You love the swimming pool.
Oh, love it.
And now, how long has it been then, if we look at that? You just, what anniversary?
It would be 71 this July.
71 years. You think it'd go that long, Len?
Yeah, people said you can't marry same tribe. I don't get love has no tribe.
And that's all for Our Vancouver for this week. I hope you'll join me weekday afternoons on CBC Radio 1 for On the Coast. Bye-bye for now.